We had an awesome first week back, and we're excited about week 2 here at London First Baptist Youth Group. We're in a series called What's This Life For? From the book of Ecclesiastes, and we are looking this week at something I'm calling reality check. First 11 verses. Last week we touched on the first 2 verses kind of to set things up. This is another kind of introductory type thing, but it's important for setting up where we're going to go from here. So this is called reality check. It's week 2. It's from Ecclesiastes 1 through 11. And the idea that we're going to talk about this week is that life is vanity, that it's meaningless, that it's chasing after the wind outside of God. So here's the first 11 verses. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Absolute futility, says the teacher. Absolute futility. Everything is futile. What does a person gain for all his efforts that he labors at under the sun? A generation comes and a generation goes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets. Panting, it returns to the place where it rises. Gusting to the south, turning to the north. Turning goes the wind, and the wind returns in its cycles. All the streams flow to the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are wearisome, more than anyone can say. The eye is not satisfied by seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Can one say about anything, look, this is new. It has already existed in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of those who came before, and of those who will come after there will also be no remembrance by those who follow them. There's a story that I ran across this week of a group of Nazi concentration camp escapees, and there was a group of them that spent 4 days in the woods trying to find their way away from the camp, trying to find their way out to freedom. 4 days they're traveling through the woods, going through the woods, trying to find their way out. And at long last, after 4 days, they see a building in the distance. And as they get closer, they realize that that building was on the actual concentration camp, that they had just circled back to where they had begun. A lot of people live life like that, going in circles, going through thing after thing and winding up back where they began and finding it doesn't get them anywhere. A psychologist named William Marstoon asked 3,000 people, what do you have to live for? 94% that he found were not living at all, just enduring the present while waiting for something to happen in the future. Life has deteriorated for a lot of people into a cycle with little meaning in and of itself, and we all feel that at times. And Solomon definitely went through that. So the first thing I want to talk about is this, a quest for meaning. And the first thing is this, creation consistently goes through the motions. He talks about the course of life. He talks about the sun rising and setting. He talks about the streams flowing into the sea, the circuit of the wind, the cycle of water. All these things illustrate that. Solomon feels this idea of going through the motions. He wants us to feel that our vanity is imprinted on the creation, on the fabric of creation. Creation just goes through the motion over and over again. The sun rises and then it sets again. The sun rises and it sets again. But fundamentally, nothing changes. Streams flow to the sea and the sea is never full. Endless activity with no resolution. Because of sin and rebellion, life in this world is futile and meaningless. Creation consistently goes through the motion. Second thing, we can't stop time or death. When he's talking about this idea here in this passage, he says, he makes it clear that there's people who've been here before us, there'll be people who will come after us, and we can't stop time. We can't halt time. We can't halt death. Time moves on, and death comes for all of us. Will we even be remembered? Is our life really worth anything? Death is the great equalizer for all people because it comes for everyone. All of our stuff, all of our technology, all the things we gain, all of the medicine, all of that stuff just allows us to postpone death for a little bit, but it still comes. It's impossible to set in motion or to change what God sets in motion. We can't stop time, we can't stop death. And then the third thing here is that sooner or later it all vanishes with the wind. There's a saying, popular saying, bumper sticker, cliche saying that says, he who dies with the most toys wins. But in reality, he who dies with the most toys still dies. We don't take anything beyond the grave. It all vanishes when we go. There's no real profit to our activity. In the New Testament, Jesus said, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and yet lose his soul? How much you make, how popular you are, how much stuff you have, possessions, all these things in this life are meaningless if they're the end that we're seeking. If this is all that there is, what permanent value is there in our life? What's in it for us? It won't be remembered after we're gone. It vanishes. It's gone with the wind. So the second thing I want to talk about is this, that life in this world can be frustrating. Psalmist says that nothing satisfies. Nothing works right because of sin and the brokenness, and we live in a broken, sinful world. Disease, death, poverty, evil, injustice characterize life today. God created the world as good, as a perfect home for us to enjoy. And the things he's given us are a means not as an end, but as a means to point to him. They're meant to cause us to see him, to appreciate him, and ultimately to worship him and reflect on him. Instead, we've made the gifts the end themselves, seeking our satisfaction in them. And to quote the great theologian Mick Jagger, we can't get no satisfaction. We'll always be let down. We'll never be satisfied. Nothing satisfies. Nothing is new. He also says this: mankind fundamentally doesn't change. People remain fickle. They remain selfish. They remain greedy. They remain cruel. They remain lustful. They remain self-centered at the core. Our ambition, our desires fundamentally, consequently, remain the same. What has been is what will be. What has been done is what will be done. That's what Solomon says. There's a whole lot of same old, same old. Nothing really changes. Yes, we make advances in certain ways. Yes, we are different than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 500 years ago. Technologically, medicinally, all these different ways. But the fundamental stuff remains, and at the heart, nothing is truly new. So in this introduction, in these first 11 verses, there's a couple of things that Solomon concludes that are important to the rest of the book and to the rest of the study. And the first one is this: life is monotonous and meaningless apart from God. Anytime I hear the idea of monotony, I think of the clip from Ferris Bueller. Bueller. And then he's teaching and he starts talking about the economic blah, blah, blah. 1981 is anyone? And everybody looks bored, and everybody just is bored to tears by his tone and by his repetitiveness, and he can't get anything from him. We're stuck in a rut like that. We're stuck in a rut going through the motions, trying to figure it all out. There's a lot of activity without a lot of change. The task repeats and repeats. There's a drudgery, a monotony to people. And we see this in jobs, which is why we try things like Casual Fridays or Hawaiian Shirt Mondays or different things like that. The redundancy of life causes boredom to people, and it causes them to just exist and to try to escape through substances, through possessions, through pleasures, through relationships, through careers, through other things. Looking for meaning, looking for transcendence, looking for purpose through those things. And Ecclesiastes is one man's search for that. It's one man's search for meaning and all those things and more. And in the end, he concludes it's all meaningless, it's all monotonous. It's just going through the motions apart from God. Second thing, we won't be fulfilled by anything without God. A lot of people think, well, if I just had more money, more pleasure, more success, more stuff, I'd be happy. And that's not any more true today than it was back then, that is not going to bring happiness and fulfillment. Ecclesiastes is a search for meaning, a search for that Solomon concludes bluntly: no, it's all pointless if that's what you're chasing after. He accumulated possessions and money and women and buildings and finances and all these different things. And it says that he did not deny himself anything he desired. If he wanted it, he got it. He wrote this book as an older man, contemplative, repentant in a sense, admitting his mistakes, sharing his experiences, sharing his conclusions with us, and saying the search doesn't work and it won't bring satisfaction. The stuff becomes idols and it never gives what it promises. Solomon had forsaken God. He had lost the thread that held it all together from his youth. And he concluded that it's all pointless when God is not the focus. Michael Crichton is known for Jurassic Park and other things. He's an author. In a book called Timeline, he has a character who's a CEO of a secretive tech company. And this CEO of this secretive tech company tells a group of people this: in other centuries, human beings wanted to be saved or improved or freed or educated, but in our century, they want to be entertained. The great fear is not of disease or death, but of boredom. A sense of time on our hands, a sense of nothing to do, a sense that we are not amused. But where will this mania for entertainment end? That's what this character says in Michael Crichton's book. Our world is built on this premise, but it'll only give temporal, short-term satisfaction, and it brings boredom and it brings weariness. Life, as most people know it, is frustrating because nothing satisfies. All the things we're seeking meaning in, they're like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. We're made for more. We're made for the everlasting. In Ecclesiastes 3:11, it says God has set eternity in man's heart. We will not find meaning, we will not find purpose that we're seeking without God at the core. It's that simple. Realize that that's Solomon's conclusions, and realize that if you go chasing after other things, you'll be bored and dissatisfied, going from one temporary satisfaction, one temporary high to another. Instead, give your life to Him. Let Him be the core. Find eternal satisfaction. Find the meaning. Find the purpose that you're seeking. You won't find it without God.